Hey, friends, welcome back to the Do Cool Shit podcast. This is the last episode of 2025, and this is definitely going to be an episode about reflection and also starting the new year and how to do that in a more supportive way. But it's going to be hopefully different than other ones that you've heard. You'll listen and you'll let me know, right? First, before I really get into it, I do want to thank you for being here. I have wanted to start this podcast for years, and this year was the year that I finally got sick of playing small in this area and did the damn thing. And you listening is a major part of why I continue to show up. So I just want to thank you for being here and share kind of vulnerably that one of my big goals in 2026 is to make this podcast even bigger, even better, have a lot more listeners and shares and whatnot. So, if you would help me make that happen by making sure that you're following, that you leave a review, that you share anything that's meaningful to you, you talk about the podcast to your friends when they ask for a suggestion, or just send it to people you think that would be helpful, then I would so greatly appreciate that and greatly appreciate you. All right, let's get into the episode. So, of course, it's the time of the year where everyone's doing their whole year in review thing, and I am not different. My clients are not different. If you follow me on social media, I've been posting a lot of prompts to help in reflection. And I've been doing a lot of reflection lately, and I would say maybe to a fault because I realized that I was really, really struggling with some things. I came up across up across some barriers that didn't necessarily feel aligned, especially yesterday where I sat down to reflect on the year and I started feeling this pressure. I felt this pressure to have some impressive list of accomplishments to prove that the year was productive and successful. And I realized that that was, again, something that just was completely misaligned with what I want reflection to be and is misaligned because earlier this year, I kind of let go of that achievement mentality. So I really realized that I was turning this into like a review, like a performance review. And by doing this, I completely missed the plot. So if you're in the same boat as me, this will be helpful for you as well. And this is something else that I really noticed, and I have been noticing over the past few years, is that so many of us reflect on an entire year and then group it into it being good or it being bad. We are like, oh, this was such a good year. Or I hear more people talk about things being a bad year. I'm really ready for this year to end. I just want 2026 to come, that it's going to be so much better. Things are going to change. And there's two big, I'm going to call them problems here, although I don't like to necessarily use the word problems. Maybe they're fallacies, whatever. When we do this, when we group things into good or bad, the first one is that the good versus bad binary is all or nothing thinking at its finest, right? We're taking 365 days, if it's not a leap year, of complex, messy, challenging, beautiful experiences and cramming it into this one single category or judgment. And when we do that, we erase every moment that we grew, every skill that we built, every time we showed up, especially when it was hard or we didn't feel like it. All of that kind of disappears, it gets swept away. The second thing here is that I hope language. I hope next year is going to be better. I hope it's going to be easier, whatever it is. It makes us feel like a passenger in our own life. It tells our brain that things are happening to us instead of recognizing that we respond, we adapt, we grow through whatever gets thrown our way. And that's a really huge missed opportunity. So instead of doing this, we're going to, do it in a different way. I'm going to offer up some things here. And one thing that I really like to do, because if I sit here and just try to manufacture a list from my memory, it's not going to work really well. And I am just like other human beings where I forget a lot of things and can tend to think about the negative things and the negative things only. So, one thing that I really like to do is I open up the photos on my phone, like in my photo app, and I just start scrolling through each month of the year. I do this monthly throughout the year, just kind of as a monthly reflection of moments of gratitude, things that I captured. And I don't know why I didn't do this for the whole year initially, but I have done it since. And I can tell you that it felt way more aligned. So, start in January, then go to February, then go to March, all the way through. And then you get a really great picture into like lots of little moments of your year. Of course, there's going to be things missing in there, but you get to put yourself back into those moments instead of trying to create meaning out of things, out of thin air. So you may see the random Tuesday dinner that you cooked that was really challenging to do and that you were proud of. You may see an instance where that brings you back to like a hard conversation that you had, but a conversation that was courageous and meaningful and ultimately supportive. You may see that spontaneous adventure that you went on, or you may see that quiet morning, like a walk outside that you went on that kind of felt like nothing, but was actually everything. And what this does is it brings you out of a place of trying to prove things. It actually puts you in a standpoint of witnessing what you actually lived through. And here's what I highly suggest when you do this: don't label shit as good or bad. As you go through these months, all of these photos that you have, instead, ask yourself, as you're in those places, in those moments, and feeling those things, what did I feel here? What did I learn? How did this shape my experience? What skills did I build? How did this support my growth, or how can it support my growth now? Even those moments that felt kind of like failures or setbacks, or those moments that you may see in your photos and not necessarily feel like the greatest things as you're looking at it. Again, we're not labeling things as good or bad. It's just feelings, and it's data, and there's information, and there is growth that lives there. And I can promise you, I do love a little woo-woo, but this is not a woo-woo feel-good exercise. This is something that really builds confidence and competence and autonomy. It supports your nervous system. Your nervous system sees things like uncertainty and helplessness and chaos and like anything else that you may deem as bad as threats. And when you don't see evidence of your own capability or your capacity and you default to self protection mode, that equals playing small, doubting yourself, staying stuck in patterns that don't serve you. But when you look back and you see proof that you handled hardship, you adapted, you learned, you kept going. There were, again, humans are negative. We tend to look at the negative things, but also looking at the moments that brought you even joy. Again, not good, not bad, but looking it at all of it, and very likely seeing things that were in the spaces that maybe you would have deemed bad before that actually like lend to you and your growth. And then you're not hoping for a better year. You're seeing evidence that you can create one. You're in a calmer state at this point, and you can proceed into the new year feeling less chaotic, feeling more regulated, and feeling more capable. The version of us, I'm going to include myself here, the version of us who started January 2025, we are not the same people that we are right now. We've grown, we've learned, we've shown up when it wasn't perfect, even when it didn't feel necessarily successful. And we didn't just survive this year. That's a word that a lot of people use. And, for some people, it's true, but we don't want to be in survival mode. That's an indication that our nervous system is not in the best standpoint. So noting that it wasn't really survival for most of us. We moved through it. We learned from it. And we became someone different because of it. And that matters. And I'm going to guess that if you're listening to this podcast, you've grown tremendously. And you've gained a ton of skills and experience. And you're probably not giving yourself enough credit for that. Now that we've talked about reflection and you may have an idea of how to do it in a more supportive, aligned way. Of course, I think that questions are another thing that you can add into the mix here as well, but I'm not going to go down that tangent. People will move from reflection to intention, right? Like, okay, new year, new me, as people say, which I am not a fan of. I'll tell you that right here and right now. So people move into how do I set myself up for success in the new year? And this is where I will say many people kind of fuck this up in this standpoint. They finish reflecting, they feel super motivated, and they immediately create this list of goals that would require 3 of them to accomplish and leave very little room for error. And the expectations are just not necessarily realistic. And when this happens, when people do this, their nervous system is like, whoa, what? It looks at that and it feels overwhelmed, probably, and it views things as a threat because there is not necessarily predictability or manageability. There's very likely some big, big things in there. And a lot of the time, those goals can feel chaotic or vague or unrealistic. And then again, our brain kind of interprets them as unsafe. And then people unconsciously sabotage themselves before they like even really get going in there. So let's talk about setting intentions or goals in a way that actually really sets us up for success, whatever that means to you. So, one thing that I suggest is making it specific and making it behavioral. So, not setting a goal like be healthier or lose weight. That's not actionable. Your brain has no idea what to do with that. So, instead, make something like I am going to strength train 3 days a week, or I'm going to focus on eating protein at breakfast. And whatever else you want to add in there. Specific behaviors give your brain a much more clear target, and that clarity signals safety to your nervous system. And it also just like gives you a lot of direction, what to actually work on, and gives you direction on what to reflect on. If it happened, if it didn't happen, why it happened, what helped you make it happen, why it didn't happen, why that was, etc. Building in flexibility is also something really big. Rigidity is not your friend. Rigid goals break. They don't really happen, or they don't lead to what you want them really to. And flexible intentions bend. So when we do this, I will also say a lot of people tend to run from structure because they view structure as rigidity, and structure is not the opposite of flexibility. So, this is also something where people tend to rebel when they build in structure because they're going off of past experiences, or to them it feels unsafe. So as you're building in structure, remind yourself that this actually helps create more flexibility. It actually helps to save you time. It actually helps you to be calmer and have less stress. Remind yourself of these things. And we'll talk about more things later that also help you. But build in flexibility, instead of I will meal prep every single meal every Sunday, try something like I'm going to prep protein sources twice a week. Instead of something like I'm never going to eat dessert or I'm cutting out sugar entirely, try something like I'm adding protein to most of my meals that I eat. And that's it. You can add dessert when you actually want it. You're adding room for adjustment, which equals room for success. And when we talk about your nervous system, it sees this as you can succeed when things aren't perfect. And that helps build confidence, self trust. Start smaller than you think you need to. Lower the freaking barrier. You guys, if I had $1 for every time someone gave me what they think their, bare minimum is, I'd have a lot of dollars. So, if you're thinking about, I need to start working out again and I need to get, 5, 6 workouts in a week, but right now you're not doing any, then let's start with 2. You can build upon that. But if you start out like, oh, that's not good enough, like that's not the mentality that has been helpful for you before. So lower the barrier of entry, start low, and then get consistent there and build upon it. If you're thinking, I'm going to start tracking everything, like maybe that's not the answer. Maybe it's I'm just going to start tracking protein. Early wins matter. They build momentum. They create proof to yourself that you can follow through. And they signal to your nervous system that this new behavior is safe and is sustainable. And that is what is going to benefit you. You can always add more. But if you do it the opposite way and you try to start really, really big, I'm going to assume that you know what happens here. Focus on addition and not subtraction. Your brain hates being told that you can't have something. We've talked about this before when it comes to comparing to a teenager or a kid. If you tell them you can't do that, what are they going to do? They're going to do it. Your brain loves being told what it gets to do. So instead of I'm cutting out sugar, try I'm going to add more nutrient dense foods. I'm going to add protein. I'm going to add fruit in. I'm going to add more balanced meals. Instead of I'm stopping late night snacking, try I'm going to create a satisfying evening routine. Addition feels expansive. Restriction feels threatening. And again, I'm going to talk about your nervous system a lot in here because it matters so much more than people know. And I think this is going to be a big topic as we go into 2026. When your nervous system feels safe, change becomes infinitely easier. Tie your intentions and your goals to values. Values are so important. And because values are what are going to be that big guiding light when things feel really freaking hard to do. Ask yourself why this actually matters to you. Not what you think you should want, but what you actually value. If your goal is strength training, is it because you value feeling capable or confident or strong in your body? That's going to be more beneficial than something like, I want to be more disciplined or something like that. That's one that I hear a lot of the time. If your alarm goes off in the morning and it's early and it's dark and it's cold, are what do you think is going to be a more reliable thing? Something that's going to benefit you more if you go, I'm self-disciplined, or if you say, I value being capable, I value feeling strong in my body. It's probably going to be a little bit easier to get out of bed and get to the gym versus I just want to feel self-disciplined. When your goals align with your values, they stop feeling like these obligations. They stop feeling so forced and they start feeling like expressions of who you are. These behaviors start to become part of your identity, and you can kind of trust that no matter what, when things feel hard, you're still going to follow through with them. And that's where sustainable change lives. So now I'm going to give you some tips. Once you decide what you want to work on in 2026, who you want to become, what your goals are, what your resolutions are, however you want to um label it or not label it, whatever. Let's talk about how to start 2026 without burning out. First, I want to mention the fresh start effect. This is #science. And I don't know if you feel this. I'm sure you do. New Year's just feels different, right? It's like that. You start to feel excited. It's like a new blank slate and there's cool shit ahead and whatnot. This is a actual researched phenomenon. At temporal landmarks like January 1st, we naturally experience an increase in motivation, in determination, and even focus on long term goals. Our brain essentially creates this mental marker that says, this is different. This is a new chapter. And I'm not going to be someone that tells you that this is bullshit. This is a real tool that you can use. The key is channeling that energy without burning yourself out in the process, or going into it and using this in a way that's unsustainable. So, here's how to actually do that. First, do not aim for perfection. I would actually encourage you to mess up early. I worked with a client before, and let's call her Sarah. She started January with this incredibly detailed plan, and she was going to meal prep every Sunday and hit the gym 5 days a week and track every macro and finally, quote unquote, get it right. Well, week one, it absolutely, like, she freaking crushed it. Week two, she missed going to the gym one day because her kid got sick. And then she started to spiral where she was saying, I already messed up. What's the point? And then by week three, she was really struggling to do any of that. So here's what we worked on: purposefully planning to mess something up early. The next time that she, started, she intentionally went to the gym on a day where time was tight and she knew she wasn't going to be able to get that whole workout in. And then she practiced her response to that. Not spiraling, not quitting, just allowing that to kind of be good enough and moving forward. What matters way more than perfect streaks is your ability to tolerate failure and control your response to it. Instead of I can't mess up, try I'm practicing how I respond when things go sideways. That skill will take you way further than perfection ever will. Give yourself permission to adjust. I'm going to throw out another case study. Let's call this person Mike. Mike is determined to work out every single day in January. By week two, he's exhausted. He's irritable. And his lifts were actually getting worse. His performance was not great. And when the suggestion was made to drop to 4 days a week, he really pushed back because that felt like giving up. But that is not giving up. That's actually skillful self-leadership. You can use January as a test period because oftentimes, again, people create like very aggressive goals. So if your goals are too aggressive and you notice this, adjust them. Nobody gets a prize for staying committed or dedicated to goals that just aren't actually really working for them. So, Mike, our hypothetical client, it drops to 4 days. His recovery improves. His lifts got stronger. His energy came back. His body composition was changing. And then he actually stuck with it past February. That's not quitting, right? That's learning what actually works for you and having the balls to adjust. Embrace the hard. This is such a big one. Let me tell you, there's so many people, so many clients who continue to say things to me like, this shouldn't be this hard for me. People who are active their whole lives, people who are used to, bouncing back, and people who are used to just pushing through. But at a certain point in people's life, when they get to be older and they have kids and a full-time job and a life that is really demanding, things can feel harder. They're also in a very different standpoint physiologically than they were before. And oftentimes people keep interpreting that as failure, but it's not. Change is uncomfortable. It always has been, it always will be. And a lot of the time here, what we've been doing feels safe. Change makes your brain think you're in danger. The fact that it feels hard doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It means that you're doing something, right? And what we talk about, when people come up to this or they say this thing to me, this shouldn't be that hard. We talk about the things that they have done. We talk about the things that have felt challenging before, like learning how to drive, starting their job, having their first kid. All of those things felt really freaking hard, very almost impossible, maybe at first. And action worked in their favor, right? So instead of thinking this should be easier or why is this so hard, try reframing into this is hard because I'm doing something new and reminding yourself that you can do hard things you already have. Focus on growth, not perfection. Focus on progress, not perfection, right? We hear this often, although it's really hard for people to do. A lot of the times, people are on the hunt for those flawless days, and that's what they deem as acceptable. And when people do that, they tend to miss all the actual progress that is happening. If there's someone who's tracking their nutrition and gets so fixated on hitting their macros spot on, then they're going to miss the times that their protein intake increased from where they were. They're going to miss noticing that their energy levels have been better. They're going to miss the acknowledgement that they've actually just been consistent in doing something for 3 weeks straight. And I always say that, doing something imperfectly is what makes progress. If you're only looking at the days that you failed, then it's not going to feel great. You're probably going to burn out and not do it anymore, right? So look for improved awareness, better decisions, skill building moments. If you're tracking your nutrition in like a macro tracker or in any other way, don't just celebrate the perfect days. Celebrate getting more protein in, celebrate more accurate logging, celebrate logging things that you wouldn't have logged in before. Again, growth lives there. Lean into support. You do not get a medal for doing this shit alone. We've talked about this time and time and time again. I've had so many clients that spend years trying to figure it out by themselves. Listen, I was there too, right? When we when we do that, there's this feeling of starting strong and then losing momentum and then feeling like you failed because you couldn't do it on your own. But when people finally join coaching or get some type of support, at first it may feel a little bit embarrassing. At first it may feel like needing support is an admittance of being weak. But the reality is that we were never meant to do this by ourselves, and we only know what we know. The people who succeed long term aren't the ones who try to just do it all solo and white knuckle their ways through things. They're the ones who build systems, find accountability, don't let their ego make decisions. So if you really want long term change, then choose the long game. Choose to have support. Choose to have someone who can offer perspective and different ways to do things and compassionately hold up that mirror for you and, help talk through things so that you can discover what's going on and why you're behaving in certain ways. Create awareness around what actually works. Start asking yourself, what actually helps me feel motivated? What makes me feel proud? What supports follow through? What helps me feel satisfied? As I had stated in the beginning, move away from good or bad. Stop labeling things and getting into this or that, the black or white, all or nothing. Start to really embrace curiosity. Maybe that's a value that you choose to embody in 2026 because that is where self awareness, that is where clarity, that is where self understanding lives. Manage your expectations, friend, because results are going to take longer than you think. You cannot plant a seed and expect a tree to grow in the next week or in the next month or sometimes even in the next year, right? Like a big ass tree. Roots grow first, then they sprout, then the leaves, and this process takes a long time. And I will also say that this is happening even when we can't necessarily see it or feel it yet. So this is also something to remember is that progress happens even when we can't see it. And when we get curious and we look for it, you'll probably find it. And finally, practice self-compassion. We're so freaking brutal to ourselves, right? We often talk to ourselves in ways that we would not talk to our friends or would not talk to our kids, that kind of stuff. Practice responding to yourself the way you would to someone you love. Compassion creates safety, and safety supports growth. This doesn't mean dismissing everything, right? It's like if you're a parent and you're teaching your kid about something, you're creating awareness to the behavior and then you're going from there, right? We're not sweeping things under the rug. So self-compassion also comes with awareness and ownership to the things that may not necessarily feel great, but you're not judging yourself through it. You're not being an asshole to yourself through it. You're just using that information as a supportive thing to move forward from a better standpoint. So, this is where we close, my friends. Before you write off this year, before you just pin all of your hopes onto next one, give yourself the gift of seeing what you actually lived through in this past year. This is where real reflection lives. It shows you the evidence of who you've become, not who you wish you were, not who you should have been, but who you actually are right now as you end 2025, as you step into 2026. And that person has tools that they didn't have before. They've built skills through every messy, imperfect moment. They've proven their capacity and their capability to adapt and grow and keep going. And that's evidence as you move into the next year. And when you combine that evidence with that fresh start effect of the new year and that increased motivation, determination, and focus to what you really want, who you are becoming, then you're not just wishing for change, you're actually equipped to create it. And a reminder in here is that you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to perform. I'm adding myself when I say this. You've already shown yourself what you're capable of. So now it is time to use that to build something cool in 2026. Not perfect, not flawless, but real, and something that is yours. Something that lends to a life filled with cool shit. So I am very excited to join 2026 with you. Again, if there was anything that was particularly helpful for you in this episode, I would love to hear about it. And again, I just appreciate you for being here. And I will look forward to chatting with you next year.